It's late summer in an exhibition hall on the edge of Moscow. The Sixth Symphony concert of the season, and every work on the program is by the same living composer. The final piece is new. It calls for church bells, a brass choir, and a percussion effect the printed score labels as cannon fire. Its composer has already written that he produced it without warmth and without love. Welcome to Same Day, Different Century. I'm Zach. Today is August 20th. The music commemorates a war that had ended 70 years earlier. In June of 1812, Napoleon's Grand Army crossed the Niemen River into Russian territory, about 500,000 men, drawn from France and much of the continent, with something like 200,000 horses and more than 1,300 guns. Napoleon expected a short campaign decided by one great battle. Russian commanders declined to give him one. They withdrew east, trading distance for time and stripping what they left behind. Most of what destroyed that army was never inflicted in combat. Napoleon's logistics were built to carry the army as far as Smolensk, which was asking a lot of it already, and then let it feed off richer country, and the Russian withdrawal denied him that country. Disease, summer heat, and desertion thinned the columns for weeks. The force that reached Borodino in September was already far smaller than the one that had crossed the river in June. The armies finally met on September 7th at Borodino, west of Moscow. 12 hours of fighting produced about 80,000 casualties between them, and the Russian army withdrew still intact. A week later, Napoleon entered Moscow and found it nearly emptied. Most of 250,000 residents had gone. Fire broke out and spread through the wooden city. Moscow's governor had ordered supply depots burned and the firefighting equipment hauled away, though how much of what burned was actually his doing is still debated. Napoleon held the ruins for about 5 weeks, waiting for a surrender offer that never came, then started west in mid-October. What followed was not a battle but an unraveling. Cold, starvation, Cossack raids, and at the Berezina River in late November, a crossing that cost tens of thousands more. Only about 100,000 of the men who had crossed the Niemen in June ever came back across it. That December, Alexander I issued a manifesto pledging a cathedral in Moscow, a permanent monument of thanks for what he described as Russia's deliverance. The pledge took a very long time to keep. The cornerstone of the Cathedral of Christ the Savior was not laid until 1839. The structure emerged from its scaffolding around 1860, and the interior decoration ran on for 2 more decades. Over 1,000 square meters of marble plaques on the ground floor, naming the commanders, the regiments, and the battles of 1812. By 1880, that cathedral was finally nearing completion, and Moscow had a cluster of state occasions arriving at once. That spring, the publisher Pyotr Jurgensen wrote to Tchaikovsky with 3 possibilities: an overture for the opening of a National Arts and Industry exhibition, an overture for the 25th anniversary of the Tsar's coronation, or a cantata for the cathedral's consecration. Tchaikovsky wanted none of them. He told Jurgensen he had an extreme aversion to writing music meant to glorify something that did not move him, and that he would not lift a finger until an actual commission, with terms, was in front of him. The commission came anyway. On the 30th of September, his longtime champion Nikolai Rubinstein asked him formally for a piece of 15 to 25 minutes, to be delivered by mid-January. 10 days later, he told his patron Nadezhda von Meck what he thought of it. There was nothing, he wrote, more antipathetic to him than composing for the sake of festivities, and in the same breath said he did not have it in his heart to refuse. Rubinstein had hired him at the Moscow Conservatory as a young man, had conducted his music when almost no one else would, and had spent 15 years putting it in front of audiences that did not yet want it. Tchaikovsky, who was by then financially secure on von Meck's allowance and free to say no, said yes. He worked fast. He had a draft finished in about 3 weeks. The orchestration was still ahead of him, and he wrote to von Meck the sentence that has followed the piece ever since. The overture would be very loud and noisy, but he had written it without any warm and loving feelings, and so it would probably turn out to be lacking in artistic merit. The full score was finished by the middle of November. The comparison he was making is the part usually left out. That same autumn, he was also finishing the Serenade for Strings, and in the same October correspondence with von Meck, he described that piece in the opposite terms. Composed from an innate impulse, something felt deeply within himself, and therefore, he dared to think, not devoid of true merit. He was not delivering a verdict on the overture's quality, so much as sorting his own output into music that came from inside him, and music that came from a letter with a deadline. What he built was a collision. The overture opens with an Orthodox hymn asking God to save his people, moves through a Russian folk tune and a theme lifted from his own early opera, The Voyevoda, sets the Marseillaise against them as the invading French, and buries it at the end under Alexei Lvov's imperial anthem, God Save the Tsar. It's an argument in music, and it is also an anachronism. The Marseillaise had lost its official standing under Napoleon and was later banned outright by the restored Bourbon kings. The Third Republic only made it the French national anthem again in 1879, 3 years before the premiere. Lvov did not write God Save the Tsar until 1833, 21 years after the invasion. The two anthems fighting each other in the score are the anthems of 1882. Tchaikovsky was scoring his own century's symbols back onto his father's war. None of the occasions that prompted the commission survived to receive it. In March of 1881, Alexander II was killed by a bomb in St. Petersburg, which ended any coronation jubilee. Rubinstein died in Paris later that same month, before he could conduct a note of it. The exhibition, already twice postponed, slipped another year. So the premiere, when it came, belonged to none of the men who had arranged it. On the 20th of August, 1882, the overture was played in a hall on the exhibition grounds at Kodainka Field, at the Sixth Symphony Concert of the All-Russian Arts and Industry Exhibition, in a program made up entirely of Tchaikovsky's music, conducted by Ippolit Altani with the Moscow branch of the Russian Musical Society. 2 smaller performances had already been given that summer at Ozerki and Pavlovsk, outside St. Petersburg. Moscow's was billed as the official first. There was no artillery in that hall. In March of 1882, sorting out how to print the part, Tchaikovsky told Jurgensen to label it however he liked. Cannon shots in Russian, Italian, or French, because the note already on the first page would explain that this was not a real cannon, but a drum. The composer's own instruction was that the effect could be produced by a large suspended bass drum. The artillery came later, added by other people who liked the idea. The audience did not share his misgivings. The Moscow performance was a success, and the following spring Anton Rubinstein, Nikolai's brother, gave it its St. Petersburg premiere. The cathedral that had started the whole chain was finally consecrated in May of 1883, alongside the coronation of Alexander III. In 1882, Tchaikovsky wrote to Jurgensen that he honestly did not know whether the overture was good or bad, but that he rather thought it was the former, and then apologized for the immodesty. More telling than anything he wrote is what he did. In the last years of his life, once he had overcome a paralyzing fear of the podium and begun conducting regularly, he led the 1812 overture 13 times, in St. Petersburg, Moscow, Berlin, Prague, Brussels, and more. That is more performances than he gave of any other work of his own. It can be read 2 ways. It may record a change of mind. It may also simply record a working conductor programming the piece that filled the hall. In 1954, Antal Dorati recorded it in Minneapolis, and Mercury went out afterward for a genuine period canon and a tower carillon and dubbed them in. In the early 1970s, the producer David Mugar suggested to Arthur Fiedler that the Boston Pops add it to their 4th of July concert on the Charles River Esplanade. where attendance had been sagging and where real cannon and real church bells could be worked into the back bay. It stuck. A Russian overture about the destruction of a French army became standard music for American Independence Day, played annually to crowds who would struggle to name the war in the title. The monument fared worse than the music. Stalin had the Cathedral of Christ the Savior dynamited in December of 1931 to make room for a palace that was never built. From 1958, the hole in the ground held an open-air swimming pool. It was rebuilt in the 1990s, and the new cathedral was consecrated on August 19, 2000, 118 years, almost to the day, after the overture written in the season of its first completion was first performed. The overture outlived the cathedral built for the same victory, and it outlived its composer's opinion of it. Every summer, somewhere, a crowd stands up for 15 minutes of music that its author called noisy and loveless, and cheers. That's same day, different century. I'm Zach. We'll be back tomorrow with another date, another story. Thanks for listening.